With the Republican clown car that is the 2016 primary fully underway, some people have noticed how far the party has gone off the rails. Now, at one point, for example, Republicans like Charlie Crist existed and they made deals, and governed, and kind of around the middle, maybe center-right. And nowadays, Charlie Crist, well, is a Democrat. He switched over. I didn't leave the party, he said, the party left me. Well, that's just one example. Besides, it makes sense that someone would like that, or some people that were basically right of center Republicans have switched over to Democrats because no rational person really wants to be part of a party whose frontrunner relies on things like self-aggrandizement and blatant racism. And of course, the guy behind him can't do an interview without invoking Nazi analogies. You really don't want to be part of that party if you're a sane, rational person, right? Now, there's a lot of factors that may have led to this massive shift to the right for the Republican Party, but one former White House chief of staff has an idea of where to start. Sarah Palin. Now, former chief of staff William M. Daley, who served in the White House from 2011 to 2012, recently wrote an article in the Washington Post blaming Sarah Palin for a lot of the insanity of today. Now he writes, quote, Palin's blatant lack of competence and preparedness needs no belaboring. What's critical is that substantive, serious Republican leaders either wouldn't or couldn't declare before or after the election, this is not what our party stands for. We can and must do better. By campaign's end, GOP operatives were shielding Palin from even the simplest questions. For example, she had flunked the "What newspapers do you read?" question as Barack Obama cruised to victory. Now, that's sad. That's pretty sad. If you can't answer, what newspapers do you read? What books do you read? There's something wrong. If you don't read newspapers, be like, I don't read the newspaper. What? What do you want? I don't read the newspaper. Okay, well, at least we know where you stand. At least you don't get hung up on that question. If you're direct and say, I don't read the newspaper, well, I mean, that leads to other inferences. But at least you're direct and honest with us, right? And not flailing at a simple question. Now, in the current GOP field, and this is funny, there's a little bit of a parallel here. See, we also have Donald Trump saying, being unable to say what Bible verse was his favorite. Oh, I like them all. Do you have a specific verse? Pretty much. That's pretty much it. Now, Palin and probably Donald Trump came out later and called that gotcha journalism. Why are you asking me these gotcha questions about my personal life? What do you? No. Don't ask me those. Don't ask me those gotcha questions. Lamestream media. Sad, right? Anyway, Daley is going to go on in this article explaining that the reason that Sarah Palin was chosen for the VP spot was because of her lack of substance. They chose her because she wasn't substantive. Interesting. Quote, Palin became a Fox News fixture, reinforcing the newly formed Tea Party's never compromised demands. Bombast, not reason, reigned. Now the settle for flash aura of Palin's candidacy looks like a warning that the party was prizing glib, red meat rhetoric over reasoned solutions. Now, they also said it's not just Palin's fault, but it's John McCain's fault for even introducing her to the public. Quote, sadly, Palin owes her fame to 2008 presidential nominee John McCain, who's generally one of the party's more thoughtful and substantive veterans. Whether McCain actively sought Palin in 2008 or passively yielded to aide's pressure, he set a new standard for GOP candidates who rely on lots of sizzle and little substance. That sounds kind of familiar. A lot of sizzle, no substance. Oh, right, Donald Trump. On a lot of issues, Donald Trump's like, I don't know. Elect me and we'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. Trust me. It's going to be great. I don't know what I'm going to do to replace healthcare, but I'm going to repeal it and then make something great. But okay, I'll figure it out. And when I do figure it out, it'll be awesome. Well, when people ask, okay, how are you going to do that? For example, how are you going to deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? How are you going to afford to build the wall? I don't know. We'll make Mexico do it. They got all that money lying around. And you know, I got a lot of Mexicans to work for me building my buildings. So, you know, that's kind of what they do. Man. So how are you going to do it? I don't know. We'll figure it out. And by the way, we'll also make America great again. Donald Trump for you. Old sizzle, no substance. Now, he's also going to argue daily that Donald Trump is a direct result of embracing the party embracing Sarah Palin. Quote, the Republican establishment's 2000 embrace of Palin set an irresponsibly low bar. Coincidence or not, a batch of nonsense-spewing hard-right candidates quickly followed, often to disastrous effect. And he goes through a few examples. He had I'm Not a Witch, Christine O'Donnell, Legitimate Rape, Todd Aiken, Michelle Bachmann, who's crazy end-of-the-world nonsense, still gets spewed on some right-wing obscure radio stations. And, of course, Herman Cain, with that kind of creepy smile that took about a half a minute to fucking make. Ugh. And the less about the weird smoking ad, the better. Just crazy, crazy ads, right? Now, he ends the article by saying, quote, now Republicans ask Americans to give them full control of the government, adding the presidency to their House and Senate majorities. This comes as Trump and Carson consistently top the GOP polls. Republican leaders brought this on themselves. Trump calls Palin a special person. Now, when you think of it in a certain context, maybe it makes a little sense. But he calls her a special person that he'd like in his cabinet. So not that way. A special person. Now that seems only fair because he's thriving in the same cynical value system that puts opportunistic sound bites above seriousness, preparedness, and intellectual heft. A lot of things both Sarah Palin and Donald Trump don't exactly, or they have in common. You see, I agree with some of his conclusions. But I think what he misses in the article, and maybe he already knows this, maybe it didn't need to be said, but I think there's always been a vocal minority in the Republican Party that is, of course, anti-science, anti-intellectual, anti-government, of course, anti-immigrant, anti-choice, pro-fundamentalism, racist, and other things. You can go on, right? That part of the party has existed for a long time. The Southern strategy of Nixon, it was part of that. And of course, the merging of religion and predatory capitalism espoused like groups such as the so-called moral majority. It's been around. And it's sort of an amalgamation of all those different groups, where you have that solid base. And they're very, very, very reliable. They always come out to the polls. And they're incredibly loud. Palin, Trump, and Carson, well, they cater to that crowd. And they're good at it. Trump's pretty good at speaking plain. He speaks at what? 4th grade level? Easy to understand. I will make things great. I am Trump. Make America great. He doesn't talk like a politician. And so people are like, yes, it's refreshing. He's not using big, scary words. He's actually talking plainly. And a lot of people like that. And let's be honest, it is nice to understand what the fuck they're saying sometimes. Now, Palin, also good at speaking plain. That is when she wasn't fucking up her teleprompter. And doesn't go off on some weird word salad-y tangent. Right? She's good at reading the screen. Trump, however, doesn't need a screen, but that of course doesn't make his speeches any more substantive than Sarah Palin's. Now finally, I think that Daley has a good point, that bringing her into the mainstream meant bringing that part of the base into the mainstream. Now this part had always existed into the underbelly of the Republican Party. But normally more established candidates, more of the economic wing, the economic conservatives, have always sort of dominated until recently. Now, this underbelly of racism, bigotry, and hatred, having that get brought to light has had a disastrous effect on the party at large, and may end up hurting them when it comes to any sort of general election. So, whether or not you blame Palin or not for that, it's pretty obvious that the GOP is heading in a bad direction.